Oh yeah, spring has arrived on the harbor. Sure, it rains a lot here, but when the sun finally comes out, it's like a dream. Even when that dream is still a nightmare. I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this continues to be my turbocharged 1963 Plymouth Valiant Signet. If you somehow don't know, this is a project I've put together on the channel over a series of videos. I've been working on this thing for like a year now, and it's still an inoperable pile of garbage. It's a remarkably solid 1963 Valiant. It's got bucket seats, because Signet, and it also happens to be a two-door hardtop, which is really cool. On the outside, it's still just a stock Valiant, although the ridiculous stance and the special small bolt pattern centerline wheels may let the observer know there's something going on here. If you look very closely at this special one-year Signet grille, you may well realize something is up. Of course, once the hood is open, it becomes quite obvious this is something kind of awesome. Or at least theoretically awesome. This is a 170 Slant 6 engine, the original one from this car as far as I know. Bolted onto the side of it on a crappy home fabricated exhaust manifold, the cheapest turbo you can buy on eBay, at least in the T3 T4 hybrid configuration. In theory, one would imagine that screwing a turbo onto a Slant 6 would do fun and interesting things. To this point, it pretty much hasn't. Alright, there have been a couple brief shining moments where this thing built some boost and kinda sorta made some power going up and down the street here. In between those moments though, so much misery. This thing just runs terrible. It idles bad, it stalls all of the time no matter what fuel system I put on it or how I set the timing. It's just ungood. I've made many videos trying to figure all of this out. If you're keeping score at home, this Holley carburetor, which I haven't shown on video before, is the fourth fuel delivery system. Also, that Offenhauser manifold is the second intake manifold I've tried, and the ignition system is currently an HEI, because we thought the MSD might have been the problem. None of those things were the problem. We can probably talk about the Holley carburetor in a minute here, like the fact that it's not at all prepped for boost. I cannot find a vacuum leak on this engine, despite hundreds of people telling me that's definitely what's wrong. I think I know what's wrong with this thing. And today, we're gonna remove a bunch of stuff I just put in the way to try and verify the cam timing in this engine. Now, step 2 is to get this thing fired up again after who knows how long. Maybe a month? Maybe 2? I don't know. Step 1 was the same as for every other project. Move another Mopar out of the way. The fuel gauge in this car actually works, and it's not giving me good news, so probably need to address that sometime soon. Hey, that's certainly better than with the EFI system, but it still sucks. It's actually kind of hot in here. I've only just learned that window doesn't work. There you go. It's usually even 6 cylinders. But again, it still sucks just as much as ever. This, like all other push buttons, leaks terribly, so I don't know if this will actually do anything. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's something. Oh, it still has half a brake. It's making the same horrible noise the Dart does. Early A-body hardtops are cool. Not sure I need 3 of them. Seriously, this thing's locking up a rear brake exactly like the GT now. I actually bought all of the replacement 9-inch brake parts for the Dart GT. Depending on the day's events, the Valiant could steal those parts, but it'll have to earn them. This is a degree wheel. And now that I own one of these and kind of sort of understand how it works, I've been using it on all of my engine builds. It's really helpful for verifying valve timing events and ensuring that they are where they need to be. I put a new timing chain set on this engine quite some time ago and showed that on video. I marveled at the fact that the dots were not actually lined up where one would expect them to be. I ran a straight edge from the one gear to the other and ensured that they were straight, but the engine wasn't actually lined up at valve overlap, meaning both valves are open and number one piston's all the way up, with the dots aligned, and I thought that was really strange. I attempted to use the feeler gauge method to ensure that the camshaft was timed correctly. I'm not so sure my method was accurate or reliable. So today, I'd really like to put a degree wheel on this engine and ensure that it's definitely correct. One small issue. Someone put a radiator and dual electric fans in the way. Things are really cramped here, and I'm just going to have to remove that setup to be able to get a degree wheel on this crank. Unlike the radiator, the charge pipe's super easy. One 10mm nut on this clamp, and the hold down for the air hat. People love to hate on my valve cover T-handles, but they sure make getting into this thing easy. And that's great, but apparently it's been on here long enough that the gasket is cooked now. Thank you. I did decide to pull my new, then slightly ruined by vice grips for 6 months heater hoses out of the way. This thing still needs a heater core. I'll probably be installing the one out of my Barracuda eventually. Hopefully it's still good. For now, the heater's just bypassed with this nice little hose that was sent to me by Matman's Mopars. Now it's time to drain the brand new coolant out of the radiator and hopefully not make a horrible mess, although I forgot to put in a hole for the drain plug, so it just kind of goes everywhere. The fans are zip stripped to the radiator, and the worst thing in the world would be cutting that. So I'm going to remove this all as a unit. Same way I installed it. One problem is I hardwired the fans, so I'm cutting the wires. And when I put this back together, we'll do disconnects. That way this will be easier in the future. The radiator hoses are random pieces I found on the wall at O'Reilly, and they barely fit. The lower in particular, I don't even know how I got it over that. I don't know how it's clamped and how it's held all this time, but I'm not taking that off. I'm going to take it off at the water pump side instead. And so to facilitate that, I removed the belt, which is super easy. Just loosen the 1/2-inch hex bolt on the alternator and flip it this way. Now I can flip it back that way, so it's out of the way of the valve cover. All right, it no longer looks clean and pretty. I guess we were just flushing the cooling system. That was the whole point of this operation. It's drained enough. The lower hose is off. Fan wires are clear. Oh. Okay. Oh! That's still making a lot of sloshing noises. Well, I never said this would be easy, but it should be possible. What is going on here? Come on. Okay, well, eventually this radiator will come out of here, and then we can continue. There we go, baby. Now it's the hose. Oh. Obviously trying not to put any holes in anything. Come on. Oh, God. Okay. There we go. Nothing to it. In case you don't remember, this is a really nice aftermarket Be Cool radiator, which I had to modify extensively to fit the 63. It's now mounted by 2 nuts over here and 1 on this side. I had to cut the rad support extensively to get the intercooler in there and to fit the radiator, so the fasteners that hold it on look kind of like this. I just remembered I got a bunch of comments about painting my already painted intercooler when I did that. It's a super thin coat of rattle can semi-flat black. I think it's gonna be fine. You know, Slant 6s don't even normally have a crank bolt right there. I must have added that one for extra security because race car or whatever. We're going to need a bolt to hold our wheel on in a second here. Making this build serviceable is something I discussed a lot in previous videos. All of those efforts pay off when it takes me like 15 minutes to get to this point, including waiting for the coolant to drain. Ooh, head studs. There have been questions about valve adjustment, and I'll probably check that again while I'm in here, but I'm pretty sure they're right. Because this engine is all together with a head on it, to verify TDC, I decided to use a piston stop. Because this is a Slant 6 and the piston's way down in the hole, I had to extend that thing almost all the way, but I did finally find a usable spot. You can see there, I spun it over forward and then backward, approaching TDC, and I've marked 2 black lines at both edges. Note, the white timing mark is almost perfectly between them. That couldn't be off by more than like 1/2 degree, so I feel good about that. If you're not familiar with the piston stop, it looks like this. That screws in place of your number 1 spark plug, and that extended end butts up against the piston as it's moving and stops it. When you do that rolling forward and then rolling backward, you get 2 marks. You find the average median point between them. That is TDC. And again, because Slant 6, I had to run this thing almost out as far as it could be. I did remove the water pump pulley to aid in seeing the wheel, which we'll install in a second here. The pump itself shouldn't be in the way, at least I hope not. I've also taken the liberty of lining this thing up at TDC, judging by the mark, which I did apply some fresh paint pen to. Anyway, it's as close as it could be. The level of precision here may not be amazing. At most, we could be off by a degree. We're not worried about being close by a degree. We're worried about the chain being set incorrectly by like an entire tooth. So we're looking for a lot more degrees than one. It should be pretty easily detectable. I think I mostly bought this Milwaukee 1/2-inch impact ratchet thing because it was cool looking, but it does have a couple important uses, and this is one of them. At least if the battery was plugged in, it would be. There we go. Nice. It's also very good for A-body K-frames. To make things simple, I did align the degree wheel with the tiny mark on the balancer. I then removed the timing tab to use the bolt to hold down our little pointer for the degree wheel. As you can see, probably kind of sorta, I've got that zeroed now and we can begin checking. Bunch of bad words later, I've got our measuring rig figured out. This is our mag-based dial indicator, the same as I've used for every other test of this kind. I've got it set above the push rod on our rocker arm. That should be measuring lobe lift. If we were to be measuring over here, obviously it would be going the other direction, and also, because of the dimension of the rocker arm, we would get a whole lot more movement over here downward compared to what we'll see over here upward. We're looking for 50 thou on the gauge. On this face, that's 1 full rotation. That would indicate 50 thousandths tappet lift. We're using 50 thou as a measurement point. It's a common point both on the ramp up and the ramp down. And by adding the two numbers we'll see on the degree wheel together and divided by 2, we're finding the center point between those. We don't have to use 50 thou tappet lift. We could use 100 thou. But 50 thou is a nice universal point. We can also use that to figure out our duration. So that's what we're gonna do. In case this measurement on top of the arm is slightly off, as long as we do it the same from both directions, our math should still work out. Now I'm gonna grab my trusty 1¼ wrench. We'll turn this thing over. Currently, we're at TDC, which means both of these valves are closed. So we're gonna turn it over roughly 1 crankshaft rotation until this intake valve for number 1 starts opening. Need to re-zero my gauge there. Whoop. Sure. Carefulling. Obviously, we need to be pretty careful as we're doing this. Once the valve starts opening, it's gonna move pretty quick. Maybe not that quick because slant 6. Okay. Line it up at 0. Yeah. There's mark number 1. The number appears to be 21. I guess I could write that down. Now what we want to do is come up that ramp from the other side. Okay, so I got to 50 backwards that way. Notice I went a little past. Now I'm going to take the slack out of the chain and go back. What is that number? 199. Well, 21 plus 199 is 220. Divided by 2 is 110. That would seem to indicate that this cam is installed with an intake lobe center line of 110 degrees. And given the spec I found online for the stock cam in the Slant 6 of 111 degrees, I guess the timing chain's on right. Valve adjustment. As mentioned, I set these before myself and I was satisfied with them at that time. Now these are supposed to be set hot, and obviously this engine is not hot. It was not hot when I set them the first time either because I had just installed the head and I had to get them in the ballpark. That's all I was trying to do. Hot, these should measure 10 thousandths intake, 20 thousandths gap exhaust. And that of course is the gap between the tip of the valve and the rocker arm. Now, because it's not hot, those gaps need to be a little bit larger. Ideally, we'll come back through here and pull the cover sometime when it has actually gotten sufficiently warm and verify that the gaps are 10 and 20, adjust them to that point. But with it cold, we need a bigger gap. I've gone for 12 on the intake and 24 on the exhaust. I will tell you, these did not fit. I pretty much backed every one of these adjusters off like one hole flat. So I don't know, maybe that'll change something. It'll probably make it louder than it was before. Not that I care about that. Will it make any difference in how it runs? Unlikely. Things are back together. Not all of the things. We still don't have a belt or a cooling system or a charge pipe. But let's see if loosening the valve adjustment miraculously fixes everything wrong with this Turbo Slant 6. All right, that's my bad. Are you for serious right now? Stay. Well, it still sucks. I noticed on the 73 Scamp that the distributor body moves around. This one does too, even with the fancy hold-down clamp kit, so I guess that's just how they are. I'm guessing that's related to that bigger O-ring that's added to the bottom of each one of these distributor bodies, in addition to the one that goes inside the little hole there. Speaking of the Scamp, that car came with a ton of spare Slant 6 parts, and I could have sworn that one of those parts was a distributor. Not having any luck finding it though. Maybe that was in my imagination. Aha! In the trunk. Oh crap, I need to go to the guitar store. This appears to be a cleaned original, presumably the one from the car, with a brand new vacuum advance pod, because those are always bad. It's been run, but might well be good. The distributor in the Scamp is locked out. This one has been modified somewhat, but it does still have a curve. Pretty tight one, maybe, I don't know, 12 degrees or something. We'll find out, because I'm going to throw this in the Valiant here, and we'll see if that magically fixes all of our problems. I doubt it. Of course, I cleaned and locked out this distributor myself. The intention was to have computer-controlled timing, not necessarily to have no timing curve. It also has that fancy hold-down modification kit from Mattman's Mopars. Matt's got all the best stuff for Slant 6s. Check out his eBay store if you're looking for that sort of thing. Anyway, I don't think there's anything wrong with this distributor now that I've replaced the pickup, but I did have it suggested that maybe that's my problem. I doubt it, but I'm going to try and knock out as many possibilities as I can. Hey, should this entire distributor body be cracked? Just wondering. Anyway, rather annoyingly, I did have to transfer that clamp thingy over to this distributor for testing. It fits on this one nicely, unlike the previous one, which was a very tight press fit. For science, I left the extra O-ring under the distributor out to see if it rocks any less. No, it doesn't. Whoa! Well, that doesn't seem great, does it? Is pulling vacuum, kind of, sometimes. I've got 19 inches of mercury there at the highest. It also just constantly fouls out plugs, but anyway. Well, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand. The last big idea I've heard time and time again is this is the turbo's fault. This poor little 170 just cannot breathe through this turbo, and that's the issue. I'm not sold on that. But I am going to test it for your viewing pleasure. So I've temporarily got a normal exhaust manifold pop back on this thing. I believe this is actually the original from the 73 Scamp. It's the only one I had handy that's not attached to an intake, which actually becomes a problem because we're going to have a big, gigantic exhaust leak here. That'll be fun. Anyway, at least we can test the theory. For science, for an absolute A to B comparison, I'm going to pop the ridiculous Holley double pumper and the offie manifold right back on there. We'll see if it's any different with the turbo taken out of the equation. If it's still super awful and terrible, well, that wouldn't be a great surprise. We'll go find a one barrel or something and finally make this thing run as good as it did when I got it. Okay. Did I tighten the fuel hose? Yes, everything's fine. Why? Well, that's too much timing. That's maybe not enough timing. Okay, so far it's just kind of the same. Why? Judging by the flames shooting everywhere, we probably do have fouled plugs. Again, no surprise there. Importantly, it still runs like absolute garbage. And to all of you guys that are running to the comments to say, oh, it's too much carburetor, it runs like garbage even when we use this much of that carburetor. Okay, I've done the math, and there is no amount of tuning that makes that work. With the cooling system reinstalled, I've let this thing run for several minutes, playing with the tune front to back. We have the benefit of 4-corner idling on this carburetor, so we can try and mix idle fuel from front to back and get things somewhat even between all 6 cylinders. Doesn't matter, doesn't care, it just doesn't work at all. No matter what, it's super, super rich, always. And the more you try to lean it out, well, all of a sudden it dies. I've verified timing with a vacuum gauge, and we are getting something like 20 inches of mercury vacuum sometimes. Doesn't matter. There is no question that bolting a gigantic carburetor onto a naturally aspirated 170 Slant 6, which is 100% bone stock, aside from a ported head, is a bad idea. It's not going to work. Well, we did it anyway, and guess what? It doesn't work. The problem with this build is that I need a fuel system capable of running this engine stock, naturally aspirated, and capable of fueling it under boost. This is exactly why I always figured an EFI system was going to be the best way to go here. I had zero intentions of making another video where you just watch me struggle, huff a bunch of fumes, get really mad, and kick this thing back out into the yard. I didn't want to do a follow-up until I finally solved the puzzle. But this isn't that. Maybe at this point, if we pop a 1-barrel and a typical manifold back on this thing, it'll run right with a 1-barrel again. But we're not making boost with a 1-barrel. After I got disgusted with that TBI setup the last time, I said I was planning to build a double pumper 500 or 550, little teeny tiny Holley. And I might still do that, but I need someone to explain to me how this will idle and work at low speed any better than that 750. Side note, this thing could well have a blown power valve, although this carb does have blowout protection with all the popping and farting that's been going on. It did kind of seem to get worse, not better, as things went on, so it's definitely a consideration. But again, what I have trouble wrapping my mind around is this 750 with the throttles almost completely closed should behave just like a smaller Holley with the throttles almost completely closed. Is there something I'm not understanding here? I know for certain we've verified there are no major vacuum leaks, we have no cam timing issue, no valve adjustment issue, and removing the turbo changed nothing. Again, this carb is stupid, too big, whatever, fine, but the way this thing is behaving is the same as it has with every other fuel system that has been on it, with the possible exception of the 1-barrel carburetor way back when. If you have any ideas for me, well, I'd kind of like to hear them, but understand, I've had a lot of suggestions. And over the course of the last year, I have tried a lot of different things. I've gone through everything I can think of to try and make this damn thing just kind of sort of run right, and it does not. This is not an ignition problem. This is not an ignition system problem. It's not a voltage problem. It's not a charging system problem. It's not an MSD or HEI problem. It's not a turbo problem. It's just garbage. I'm really proud of this setup. It's super neat. It doesn't work, but it is super neat. Hey, let's get a round of applause for the true hero of this saga. That starter. It's got to be the hardest working starter in the galaxy. Oh, there is just an uncapped oil return in the pan currently. Doesn't seem to leak too bad. Okay. Thank you. Time to shove this thing in the yard again. Like maybe for a long time. Why? I just had to wiggle all the wires on the relay. That makes perfect sense. I may legitimately have to push this thing. Anyone want to buy a 63 Valiant Signet 200 two-door hardtop with a 170 that runs like crap? It could be yours. I'm kidding. Or am I? Well, that was really miserable and we learned nothing. Hopefully you enjoyed it or something. Anyway, thanks for watching. And remember, insanity is this. Oh yeah, it's growing its own ecosystem. That's nice. Is it too late to just put a 273 in it?